the question of women's reproductive freedom continues to be a matter of critical importance in the upcoming election. At the presidential debate last week, it became clear that the two candidates could not be further apart on the issue. The former president took credit for the, quote, great service, he said, he did in erasing the constitutional right under Roe versus Wade. On the other hand, Vice President Harris asked us to consider what abortion bans mean for young survivors of rape or incest who are forced to carry pregnancies to term, or for women who miscarry and are repeatedly denied access to life-saving care. That is the world we live in today because of the Boggs decision, because of Donald Trump and his success in choosing 3 ultra-conservative Supreme Court justices who overruled Roe versus Wade. Make no mistake, the former president sees the polls. He knows that limiting women's access to make their own decisions on reproductive care and choice is wildly unpopular, even in conservative red states. That is why former President Trump is twisting himself into knots, trying to have it both ways, taking credit for overruling Roe versus Wade to appease his base, while refusing to acknowledge all of the suffering that has resulted. When Roe versus Wade was overruled, anti-choice politicians warned us that it would only be the beginning of policies that limit women's reproductive freedom. And for once, they were telling the truth. The overruling of Roe versus Wade has been accompanied by a troubling increase in fetal personhood laws that threaten access to assisted reproductive technologies, including in vitro fertilization or IVF. I might say, before you go any further, that the presiding officer has been a leader on this issue, for good reason. She's not only right on the issue, it's personal to her and her family. I thank you for your leadership. Earlier this year, after the Alabama Supreme Court ruled that frozen embryos created during IVF were children under the state's wrongful death statute, the national debate ensued. I held a hearing in my Judiciary Committee on this disturbing trend. We heard moving testimony from Jamie Hurd, an Alabama woman whose IVF treatment was interrupted by this extreme decision in court. We also heard compelling testimony from you, the presiding officer, Senator Tammy Duckworth, who was able to have her 2 beautiful children with the help of IVF. Earlier this year, Senators Duckworth, Murray, Booker, and Schumer introduced the Right to IVF Act, which I am honored to co-sponsor. It establishes a clear and enforceable nationwide right to receive, provide, or cover IVF services and other assisted reproductive technology. It also expands insurance coverage for that care. Whether, when, and how to expand one's family is a private, personal matter. Every American should be able to access the care and resources they need to start a family, however they choose. Yet, when the Senate last considered this bill in June, only two of 49 Republicans voted to consider the bill. The rest of the Republican caucus filibustered this critical legislation. They say they're for IVF. They won't vote for the bill that guarantees it will be legally there. Republicans led by former President Trump know that the American people do not support this extreme position and are desperate to fool us into thinking they don't mean what they say. Well, they'll have another chance to show the American people where they really stand on IVF tomorrow. Because if Republicans truly support privacy, freedom, and the right to access IVF treatment, they're going to join us on a bipartisan basis to consider this bill. They can't have it both ways. They can't claim to support IVF while voting against legislation that protects the rights of families to make that decision. I might add parenthetically that this is personal to me as well. I have 2 beautiful grandkids who are the product of IVF, and I'm so happy that that happened. My daughter and her husband had just about given up. They couldn't find a way to do it. And they found this one clinical test that was taking place, and it was successful. And we had two babies come forward out of it. And they're 12 years old now, and we're so happy to have them. IVF was the reason they're here. And this notion that we're going to play games with this treatment is unfair to families who are desperate to have children and make them part of their future. I yield the floor.